The year was 356 BC. In the ancient kingdom of Macedon, a legend was born. His name was Alexander. His father was King Philip II, a ruthless and ambitious ruler. His mother was Olympias, a woman of fierce passion and even fiercer loyalty. Alexander's birth was said to be heralded by omens and prophecies, marking him out for greatness. Even as a child, Alexander was different. He was headstrong and ambitious, with a thirst for knowledge that was insatiable. He was fascinated by philosophy, poetry, and music, but it was the art of war that truly captivated him. He yearned to prove himself on the battlefield, to conquer new lands and carve his name into history. Little did he know his time would come sooner than he thought, but for now Alexander was but a prince, heir to a powerful kingdom in a world on the brink of change. His destiny, like a tightly wound spring, was ready to unfurl. The world would tremble before him. At the age of 13, Alexander's life took an extraordinary turn. He was sent to be tutored by the greatest mind of the age, Aristotle. Under the tutelage of this renowned philosopher, Alexander's mind was honed to a razor's edge. Aristotle instilled in Alexander a deep love for learning, a passion for knowledge that would stay with him throughout his life. He introduced the young prince to the worlds of philosophy, logic, and ethics. He taught him to analyze, to question, and to think critically, invaluable skills for a future king and conqueror. But Aristotle's teachings went beyond mere academics. He saw in Alexander the potential for greatness, the spark of a leader who could change the world. He nurtured Alexander's natural charisma and strategic brilliance, shaping him into a leader who could inspire and command. And so, under the watchful eyes of Aristotle, the seeds of ambition were sown in the fertile ground of Alexander's mind, waiting for the day they would blossom into conquest. The idyll of Alexander's education was shattered when he was just 20 years old. News arrived that sent shockwaves through the kingdom. King Philip had been assassinated. In an instant, Alexander's world was turned upside down. The weight of the Macedonian throne, the dreams of his father, the expectations of an entire kingdom fell upon his young shoulders. Some saw Alexander's youth as a weakness, an opportunity to seize power for themselves, but they underestimated the steel that ran through the young king's veins. He quickly consolidated his power, ruthlessly crushing any hint of rebellion. He rallied his father's veteran generals and hardened troops, his voice booming with a confidence that belied his age. Alexander was now king. He had inherited his father's kingdom, his army, and his unfinished dream, the conquest of the mighty Persian Empire. The time for learning was over. The time for action had arrived. In the spring of 334 BC, Alexander set out to achieve what no Macedonian ruler had dared to dream before, the conquest of the Persian Empire. Leading a well-trained army of Macedonians and Greek allies, he crossed the Hellespont, the narrow strait separating Europe and Asia. This was no mere military campaign. It was a crusade fueled by ambition, vengeance, and a thirst for glory. The Persian Empire, vast and wealthy, stretched from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River. Its ruler, Darius III, commanded a massive army made up of soldiers from every corner of his empire. He looked down upon Alexander as a young upstart, a threat easily extinguished. He would soon learn the folly of underestimating the young Macedonian king. Alexander's army, though smaller, was a well-oiled machine. At its heart were the formidable Macedonian phalanxes, disciplined blocks of infantry armed with long spears and shields. They were supported by elite cavalry units, skilled archers, and light infantry. At the head of this force was Alexander himself, a charismatic leader who inspired his men to feats of extraordinary courage and loyalty. Section 5, Clash of Titans at Issus. The first major clash between Alexander and Darius came at the Battle of Issus in 333 BC. The Persians, confident in their superior numbers, chose a battlefield that favored their vast army. They expected to overwhelm the Macedonians with sheer force, but Alexander had a knack for the unexpected. With lightning speed, Alexander led a daring cavalry charge right at the heart of the Persian army, where Darius himself was positioned. The Persian lines buckled, caught off guard by the ferocity of the Macedonian assault. Darius, fearing for his life, fled the battlefield, leaving his army to its fate. The Battle of Issus was a resounding victory for Alexander. It sent shockwaves throughout the Persian Empire and cemented Alexander's reputation as a brilliant military commander. The young king of Macedon had challenged the mightiest empire the world had ever known and emerged victorious. Section 6, a master of Persia. In the wake of his victory at Issus, Alexander continued his relentless march eastward. City after city fell to his armies. He liberated the Greek cities of Ionia, who welcomed him as a liberator from Persian rule. He laid siege to the island city of Tyre, a feat of military engineering that showcased the determination and ingenuity of Alexander's forces. Finally, in 331 BC, Alexander faced Darius again at the Battle of Gaugamela. Once more, the Persians vastly outnumbered the Macedonians, but Alexander had learned from his previous encounters. He used his army's speed and maneuverability to outflank the Persian forces, leading a decisive cavalry charge that routed Darius's army and secured Alexander's control over the Persian Empire. With the Persian Empire at his feet, Alexander became the most powerful ruler in the world. He had achieved in a few short years what his father had only dreamed of. But Alexander's ambitions did not end with the conquest of Persia. He had set his sights on even grander goals: to reach the ends of the world and to create an empire unlike any before it. Section 7, to the ends of the earth. Alexander's conquest of Persia was not just about military domination. He was determined to create a new kind of empire, one that transcended cultural boundaries and embraced the diversity of its people. He adopted Persian customs and dress, much to the dismay of some of his Macedonian companions. He encouraged intermarriage between his soldiers and Persian women, aiming to create a new ruling class loyal to him alone. Wherever he went, Alexander founded cities, each one named Alexandria in his honor. These cities, strategically located along trade routes, became centers of learning, commerce, and cultural exchange. The most famous of these, Alexandria in Egypt, would become one of the greatest cities of the ancient world, home to the legendary Library of Alexandria and a beacon of knowledge for centuries to come. Alexander's dream was to create a cosmopolitan empire, a melting pot of cultures where Greeks, Persians, Egyptians, and others could live together in harmony. He saw himself as a unifier, a bridge between East and West. But his vision was not shared by all. The seeds of resentment sown by his ambition and his thirst for conquest would eventually bear bitter fruit. Section 8, the Ordeal of India. Driven by an insatiable desire to reach the eastern edge of the world, Alexander pushed his army further eastward into the heart of India. They crossed the Indus River in 326 BC, entering a land of strange customs, exotic animals, and fierce warriors. Alexander's men, weary from years of campaigning, were pushed to their limits in this new and challenging environment. They faced fierce resistance from Indian rulers, most notably King Porus, whose war elephants terrified the Macedonians. Despite the hardships, Alexander's army fought on, winning victory after victory. But their morale was low. They had been away from home for years, fighting in distant lands for a king whose ambitions seemed to know no bounds. Finally, at the Hyphasis River, the modern Beas River, Alexander's troops refused to go any further. Exhausted, homesick, and wary of the unknown lands that lay ahead, they pleaded with their king to turn back. Reluctantly, Alexander agreed. He had reached the limits of his army's endurance and perhaps the limits of his own dream. Section 9, the lion laid low. In 323 BC, after a journey of thousands of miles and countless battles, Alexander the Great returned to Babylon, the city he had chosen as the capital of his vast empire. He was just 32 years old, but years of campaigning, hard living, and perhaps the weight of his own achievements had taken their toll. While preparing for a new campaign to conquer Arabia, Alexander fell ill. His condition deteriorated rapidly. Fever racked his body and he grew weaker by the day. The man who had seemed invincible, who had stared down death on countless battlefields, was now facing his own mortality. On June 10th, 323 BC, Alexander the Great breathed his last. The exact cause of his death remains a mystery to this day, shrouded in speculation and intrigue. Some whispered of poison, others of disease. Whatever the cause, the world mourned the passing of a legend. The empire he had built, held together by his charisma and military genius, would soon fragment and fall into the hands of his generals. But Alexander's legacy was only just beginning. But Alexander's legacy was only just beginning.